Welcome back to Backstage Melody. They gave us the most inspiring anthem of the 80s. But behind the scenes, the band was falling apart. Don't Stop Believin' became a global symbol of hope and perseverance. But for Journey, it marked ego wars, disappearances, and a frontman who walked away at the peak of fame. So how did the band behind rock's most unstoppable hit completely lose control? This is the story of how Journey's biggest triumph couldn't save them, and why Don't Stop Believin' became their most ironic masterpiece. The birth of a classic, a song with no chorus. In the summer of 1981, Journey wasn't just another rock band. They were on the verge of becoming a movement. They had already climbed the charts with Infinity and Departure, fueled by arena-packing hits like Wheel in the Sky and Any Way You Want It. But the band wasn't satisfied with just radio-friendly success. They wanted to make something iconic, something that would outlive trends, even outlive them. Enter Jonathan Cain. Freshly recruited from the Babies, Cain joined the band and immediately brought something different to the mix. He wasn't just a keyboardist, he was a songwriter with a storyteller's heart. And during one early writing session, he recalled a piece of fatherly advice he'd heard growing up. Don't stop believing. It stuck with him. Neil Schon had been jamming with a new riff, simple yet hypnotic. Cain added a pulsating keyboard intro that sounded like a heartbeat under neon lights. Then Steve Perry took over, spinning a lyrical scene right out of a Bruce Springsteen playbook. A small town girl, a city boy, two dreamers on a midnight train going anywhere. But here's the kicker. There was no chorus. The song didn't follow any traditional structure. The title phrase, Don't Stop Believin', didn't even appear until the final minute. It was a risky move for a band chasing mainstream dominance. Even within the group, there were doubts. Would listeners stick around long enough to hear the payoff? But Perry believed in it. He called the structure cinematic. He wanted it to feel like a slow build, tension, then release. A journey in itself. And for him, it wasn't just about characters in a song. It was personal. Perry had grown up the son of a Portuguese immigrant, working odd jobs, struggling to find his way. That line, Don't Stop Believin', was more than a lyric. It was his mantra. When they recorded it for Escape, no one imagined what was coming. The album would become Journey's biggest, selling over 10 million copies in the US alone. But oddly, Don't Stop Believin' wasn't even the lead single. It was just there, a track with promise. And yet it started to grow, slowly, quietly, like a fire catching wind. The audience felt something in it, something raw and real, a promise that no matter where you came from, your story wasn't finished yet. But as the song climbed, things inside the band were starting to fray. The music was flawless, but behind the scenes, egos, exhaustion, and buried tension were about to hit a boiling point. Because sometimes, when the world's watching your biggest moment, you're already falling apart. Steve Perry, the voice, and the problem. To millions of fans, Steve Perry was untouchable. That soaring emotional voice wasn't just the sound of Journey. It was Journey. He could sing about heartbreak, hope, or rebellion and make it feel like your story. The man had range, power, and charisma. But behind closed doors, things weren't as smooth as his vocals. Within the band, Perry's rise came with complications. Originally brought in by manager Herbie Herbert in 1977 to push Journey toward more mainstream success, Perry wasn't warmly welcomed at first. Guitarist Neil Schon and drummer Ainsley Dunbar were skeptical. Perry didn't come from their bluesy jam band background. He was a crooner with pop instincts. But then came Infinity, and his voice proved undeniable. Audiences connected immediately. Album sales exploded. Suddenly, Journey wasn't just a rock band, they were a chart-topping machine. And with success came power. Perry started to assert more creative control. He pushed for ballads like Open Arms and Faithfully, which some bandmates initially hated. Cain was on board, but others thought the band was losing its edge. What fans saw on stage, the tight harmonies, the crowd-pleasing smiles, masked a growing divide. Perry was a perfectionist. In the studio, he could do 60 takes for a single line if it didn't feel right. He obsessed over mixing. He changed arrangements last minute. Sometimes he'd show up hours late or disappear altogether. His intensity wasn't about ego. It was about control. And for him, it wasn't just about the music. It was personal. Perry had grown up in small-town California with a single mother after his parents divorced. His dad was a singer too, but abandoned the dream. Perry never forgot that. He carried the weight of his family's sacrifice. He believed he had to make it, and once he did, he became terrified of losing it all. Bandmates described him as brilliant, but emotionally closed off. He didn't party. He didn't hang after shows. While others relaxed on the road, Perry would isolate himself, writing, thinking, second-guessing. It made him hard to reach and harder to work with. The higher the band climbed, the more it felt like a pressure cooker. Perry was their greatest asset, but also their biggest wild card. And just when they needed him most, that tension reached a breaking point, because the man who gave them everything was about to walk away. The escape that broke the band, Perry's walk away. By the mid-1980s, Journey was riding a wave few bands ever caught. They'd released back-to-back hit albums, packed stadiums across the country, and dominated MTV. Steve Perry, with his signature voice and onstage presence, had become a pop culture icon. The world saw unity and success. But behind the glittering curtain, Journey was starting to unravel, and no one felt it more than Perry. The signs were there. He had grown more distant on the Frontiers tour, quiet, moody, often absent from post-show celebrations. His obsession with perfection had turned into paralysis. Every note had to be flawless. Every performance had to feel right. And if it didn't, Perry took it personally. But there was something deeper happening. Perry's mother, Mary Quaresma, had been battling illness for years. She had always been his anchor, his biggest cheerleader. When she passed away, it gutted him. Fans barely saw it. The band barely talked about it. But Perry was unraveling emotionally, and no one could pull him back. As Journey began preparing for their next phase, what would become the Raised on Radio tour, Perry was supposed to lead the charge. He had co-produced the album. He was more involved than ever. Then, without warning, he vanished. No calls, no goodbye, just silence. The band was stunned. Rehearsals were halted. Promoters grew anxious. Their record label had no answers. Steve Perry, the voice of Journey, had walked away, and no one knew if he was coming back. For weeks he went off the grid. No press, no band communication, no updates. Perry reportedly retreated to his hometown, grappling with grief and mental exhaustion. He wasn't rebelling, he was drowning. And while fans waited for tour dates, the band waited for a man who no longer wanted to be a rock star. When he finally returned, things weren't the same. The energy had shifted. The trust was fractured. Sure, Raised on the Radio came out. It sold well. It had hits like Be Good to Yourself and I'll Be All Right Without You. But it wasn't the same Journey. Key members like bassist Ross Valerie and drummer Steve Smith were let go during the sessions. Some say pushed out, others say they quit out of frustration. Perry wasn't just the singer now. He was the leader, the producer, the face, and the wall between them. The tour felt forced. The spark was dimming. And though they didn't say it out loud, most of the band knew Journey, as they knew it, was already gone. Don't Stop Believin'. The ironic rise. By the late 80s, Journey was fractured, drifting apart both musically and emotionally. But while the band faded from the spotlight, their anthem refused to die. Don't Stop Believin', the underdog track with no chorus and a slow build, started showing up in the most unexpected places. It became a stadium favorite, blaring during sports games, hyping up fans with its optimistic message. Teams across the country, from college football squads to Major League Baseball franchises, adopted it as a rallying cry. And then came Hollywood. The song started creeping into soundtracks, subtly at first. Then came the 2003 film Monster starring Charlize Theron. Suddenly, a new generation was hearing that iconic piano intro and falling in love with it all over again. But it was The Sopranos that transformed the song into something legendary. In the 2007 series finale, the show's final moments are soundtracked by Don't Stop Believin', as Tony Soprano sits in a diner, seemingly moments before something terrible, or nothing at all, happens. The screen cuts to black. Silence, debate, icon status. That one scene turned the song into a cultural touchstone overnight. It became more than a rock anthem. It became a symbol of suspense, ambiguity, and strangely, hope. From there, the song exploded. iTunes downloads surged. Spotify streams climbed into the hundreds of millions. Cover versions popped up on Glee and American Idol. Barack Obama even used it during campaign rallies. It was no longer just Journey's song, it was America's song. But here's the tragedy. The man who made it unforgettable wasn't part of any of it. Steve Perry had vanished from the public eye. After the Raised on Radio tour, he stepped away entirely. He didn't promote the song's resurgence. He didn't capitalize on the fame. He didn't even perform it. He turned down reunion tours, declined television appearances, and rarely gave interviews. While the world shouted the chorus he wrote, Perry stayed silent. He once told an interviewer that hearing the song in public was surreal, that it belonged to everyone now, not just him. And maybe that was the bittersweet part. The world couldn't stop believing. But Perry had already let go. Behind the song's rise was the fall of a man who had poured everything into it and burned out in the process. The irony, the more the world embraced the song, the further it pushed Perry away. And as the song climbed to immortality, what was left of the band that created it? Turns out, not much. Lawsuits, resentment, and the trademark war. By the 2000s, Journey was a band in name only. A revolving door of musicians anchored by Neil Schon and Jonathan Cain. They still toured, they still sold tickets. But the classic chemistry, gone. And the soul of the band, Steve Perry, was nowhere to be found. Still, the name Journey carried weight. It filled arenas, it sold merch, it had value. And that's when things got ugly. In 2022, headlines broke. Steve Perry was suing his former bandmates. The issue? Trademarks. Neil Schon and Jonathan Cain had quietly filed a trademark over a dozen of Journey's classic song titles, including Don't Stop Believin', Open Arms, Any Way You Want It, and more, for use on merchandise, apparel, and branding deals. Perry, who had co-written many of those hits, wasn't notified or consulted, and he wasn't having it. He filed a petition with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to cancel the registrations, claiming the filings were made behind his back and violated previous band agreements. To him, it wasn't just a legal oversight, it was betrayal. Schon fired back publicly. He accused Perry of hypocrisy, saying that the singer had abandoned the band years ago and only showed interest when money was involved. He insisted the trademarks were meant to protect the brand and keep it in the hands of those who were still active. The public didn't know who to believe. Was Perry defending artistic integrity? Or was he trying to cash in on nostalgia? Was Schon protecting the Journey legacy or exploiting it? Behind the lawsuits were years of resentment, unspoken tensions from decades past. Perry's abrupt exit, Cain's growing influence, Schon's control of the touring version of the band, it all came bubbling back to the surface. And the thing they were fighting over? A name? A logo? A few words on a t-shirt? But really, it was about ownership of a dream that had fractured long ago. Don't Stop Believin' had become bigger than all of them. But instead of bringing them back together, it split them even further apart. The irony was bitter. The band that once wrote songs about unity, love, and perseverance was now locked in courtroom battles over who had the right to profit from those very ideas. What had started as music ended in legal documents, depositions, and press statements. The brotherhood was broken, and no chorus could fix it. A song that outlived the band. Don't Stop Believin' didn't just survive the band's collapse, it transcended it. Today it's one of the most streamed songs of all time. It's played in packed stadiums, at weddings, in graduation speeches, political rallies, talent shows, you name it. From suburban karaoke bars to Super Bowl commercials, its chorus has become a cultural fixture. There are people who can't name a single Journey album, but know every word of that song. It's a generational bridge, a time machine, an anthem of resilience, and it's everywhere. But what's haunting is this. The classic lineup behind it, the one that poured their hearts into the recording, no longer exists. Steve Perry, the voice that made Don't Stop Believin' unforgettable, has remained mostly silent. After stepping away from Journey, he lived in near-complete privacy for 2 decades. He re-emerged briefly in 2018 with a solo album, Traces, a deeply personal, melancholic project dedicated to a woman he loved and lost to cancer. He didn't perform Journey songs. He didn't tour. He didn't look back. When asked why, Perry simply said he didn't want to go back to something that wasn't real anymore. Meanwhile, Neil Schon has carried the Journey name forward with new lineups. Filipino vocalist Arnel Pineda, discovered on YouTube, took on the near impossible task of filling Perry's shoes. And while he's done it with power and passion, even he admits he's singing someone else's story. The music lives on, but the relationships behind it, they're long gone. Cain and Schon have had their own public disputes. There have been lawsuits, replacement members, even backstage fights over political songs played before concerts. The unity that once defined Journey is now replaced by business partnerships and lawyers. And yet, through it all, the song plays on. Don't Stop Believin' has outlived every falling out, every feud, every faded friendship. It's no longer a song owned by 5 men. It belongs to the world. But that raises a painful question. Can something live forever? If the people who made it are gone? Don't Stop Believin' promised hope. But behind the scenes, Journey was falling apart. It became the anthem of resilience, while the band crumbled under pressure, lawsuits, and silence. Steve Perry walked away. The band fractured, but the song lived on, bigger than ever. It didn't save Journey, but maybe it saved something in all of us. If you love the stories behind the music, hit subscribe. This is Backstage Melody, where the songs you love reveal the stories you never knew. Like, turn on notifications and tell us, what song should we uncover next? Thanks for watching.